Cinema Classics is brought to you by the Gateway Film Center, 1550 North High Street, Columbus, Ohio. For the details and showtimes online at gatewayfilmcenter.com.
The award-winning Cinema Classics is produced by John DeSando and Johnny DiLoretto. Listen to the shows online at WCBE.org.
I'm John DeSando.
And I'm Johnny DiLoretto.
And this is
Cinema Classics. And we are at the Gateway Film Center as usual.
Yeah. You know, we have, I think, about 8 kids between us, right?
Yeah, you mostly on your side.
Mostly on my side.
Yeah.
And we
how many women? 8 kids and how many women?
I have 5 daughters.
No, I mean wives. Wives and mothers. I can claim 1.
I blocked them out.
Okay.
There probably is something like 2.
All right.
But anyway, and we have shown our kids an enormous number of movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've been kind of careful. You have been more careful than I in what we have exposed them
You
to.
got to these days.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up in a different period. I watched movies. I don't think there was any sort of parental involvement in what I was watching.
Well,
at all.
Yeah, I happen to let my...
There wasn't even television. when
I
we were
know,
a
but
kid.
I happen to let my daughter sit through Clockwork Orange. I think that was a mistake.
That was probably stupid.
She was 6
That was
or
a little
7.
bit. She was 6 or 7.
Yes.
Oh my.
I know it was a dumb mistake because I was fixing the projector, doing all
You know,
that stuff.
the only saving grace in that scenario is that she might not have understood everything that was happening.
No, I think she did because she went on to write a film script for which she got $500,000.
That's awesome.
Claiming that my taking her to Harold and Maude
Mm-hmm.
convinced her that she wanted to write for movies.
Now, see, that is a useful movie to show children.
Yeah.
Of a certain age. Obviously, Harold and Maude is a romance between an older woman played by Ruth Gordon, a much older woman.
79 years old.
70s, yeah. And Bud Cort, who was probably in his 20s at that
19.
time. 19
Yeah.
years old. It's a great movie, a dark comedy, but also it has a lot of heart. It's a beautiful movie. One, it's, you know, I find a lot of value in showing my kid movies that value human relationships. And, you know, it's often hard for them to kind of engage with movies like that, especially when they're bombarded with a lot of spectacle all the time, and they're addicted. He's addicted. He loves the superhero movies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But a movie like that, I think, is great and, in a way, mesmerizing because of its premise. You know, they don't actually show anything, but
No.
you know what I mean? The
Yeah.
sort of looming, the romantic tension that looms
Right,
over.
lovemaking between the 79-year-old and 19 is grotesque under any other circumstances. But Garson Kanin is the writer, and I think that's what really stimulated Thea was the brilliance of the writing as well as the concept, which is intriguing. But more than that, it's so witty, and I believe that's what.
And Ruth Gordon is amazing
Boy,
and hypnotically good.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, anybody falls in love with her then.
So how about a more mainstream film for a kid? Now we'd say not older than 12 years old.
Okay.
So what movie would you want to make sure your child, let us say Vincent,
Right.
had seen by the time he's 12? He's now 10.
Yeah. Cool Hand Luke. Why is that?
I don't know, man.
Why is
Because I
that
think
funny?
if we had a lottery, nobody would ever pick that movie for the one a kid should have seen.
No, I think every young man should see that movie.
Oh, every young man.
Well, a kid should see that movie because I think it lays the groundwork for being a decent young man.
That's great, and that is so.
And you know, there's a lesson. Like, look, if you look at high school, you know, and middle school. Let's even go that. If you look at middle school as this sort of crucible, right? This social crucible. A movie like Cool Hand Luke is rife with wonderful life lessons. Number 1, don't take crap from anybody. Number 2,
There's a good. That's a
number
good
2,
one.
don't worry about what other people think. You know, I love the fight scene between George Kennedy and Paul Newman.
Right.
George Kennedy is a bully. There's, you know, no doubt about that. He's a bully, and he doesn't bait Newman. Newman doesn't fall prey to his needling. But when they do fight, and George Kennedy wins the fight, Paul Newman just keeps standing up. He gets knocked down, he stands back up. He gets knocked down again, he stands back up. He can't pose any physical threat to George Kennedy, but his getting up time and again actually results in his spiritual meaning of that.
Okay, so the next movie for Vincent would be The Godfather.
Well, what lessons can you learn?
Lesson is perseverance, family values.
Actually, you know, see, that is, I think that's true.
I know, I do.
Family comes first.
All right, come on. What about for people who don't understand movies as well as you do, or have such an arcane history? What about The Wizard of Oz?
It's a great movie.
Okay, do you think that's one every kid should have seen?
Absolutely.
Why?
And I think it's a movie that kids should return to on an annual basis, which many kids did return to that movie because of how it used to play on television. It
Sure.
would appear annually around Thanksgiving. But I noticed when I started watching that film again, when my son was 2, I think was the first time I showed him Wizard of Oz, and it's mesmerizing because of the colors and the music. Every time I would watch it, I thought that I was going to get sick of watching The Wizard of Oz with him over and over again because, you know, kids are repetitive viewers. I thought, oh my God, he's going to ruin this movie for me by watching it so many times. And yet, the movie only became richer, even in those obnoxious numbers of viewings. There's always something to discover. You start really piecing together the thematics, and the subtext starts to really come alive. And I think that's great for kids. They don't get it, obviously, when they're young, but returning to it.
And I think you've caught on for me what is essential about this really great movie that every kid should see is that it's one that adults like seeing.
Yeah.
For instance, I thought you might have, and you probably would, have It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh yeah.
As a movie a kid should see.
I do. I have not shown my son that movie yet. I don't think he'd get it yet.
Okay. All right.
But I'm banking on him being 11 years old and showing
Okay.
him.
All right. Something like E.T.
Every kid should see that. I'm a big fan of emotional wallops to children. I think there's something really great about that. When I was a kid, we had HBO, and you know, HBO used to show these movies repeatedly. You know, one movie would show 30 times for the course of a month. And there was this really terrible movie, The Champ. It was the remake of the Wallace Beery classic with John Boyd and Ricky Schroeder. Yeah. John Boyd is the boxer, and Ricky Schroeder's the kid, and John Boyd takes a beating in the third act of the movie and dies. And you know, it's a really heart-wrenching, tear-jerking scene. And I watched that movie over and over and over again. And sort of in this really kind of perverse way, I enjoyed the emotional outlet that it gave me. I wept at that movie. And it's so much so that my mom forbade me to watch it anymore because I was a basket case.
Now, you know, you're talking about that emotional part. How about To Kill a Mockingbird?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like the sentiment in that, but most of all, I like the fact that it's a cruel world.
Mm-hmm.
And from the kids' point of view as well,
Yeah.
which really makes it good. But here's one.
But see, it's also a great, no pun intended, gateway movie because, you know, so many of today's white kids have no idea about the history of the African American struggle in the United States. They pick up bits and pieces from their history lessons.
Right, good one.
But to really kind of show them something like that, obviously they're not going to show them 12 Years a Slave, but that would be part of the, you know,
That's nice.
so you start with To Kill a Mockingbird, right, which is
Right.
a kind of easing them into that kind of suffering.
And it's a social issues in general.
Sure.
Yeah. Here's one that you and I like, and I wonder what you think about showing it to kids under 12. Fantastic Mr. Fox.
It's a great movie.
I know it is, and we
Yeah.
both love it. I'm trying to think of it now for kids.
Yeah.
Will they get it?
Of course. Well, they don't get everything in it,
Yeah.
but it's the animation.
Beautiful.
It's so fun. The music is so great. It's definitely enjoyable. I can see how kids are entertained by that movie. And
Right.
again, it's one of those movies that you unpack over the years. There are treasures to be found in that movie later as you get older and you understand more about human relationships.
Yeah, and I think in Fantastic Mr. Fox, there's just such a lightness in that movie, such a brilliant use of George Clooney's voice.
Mhm.
I think there are issues. Of course, they're fighting the farmer, aren't they? They're doing. I mean, they're struggles.
Yeah.
for the family that stays together as a unit.
Well, I think what's interesting about that movie is it ends, right, with them believing they've found some sort of paradise in that fluorescent lit grocery store.
Oh, gosh.
And there are some conflicting messages there, I think, that are interesting for
That's
for
great.
kids.
That's great.
You know, I don't think that it's a utopia as Mr. Fox thinks it is.
Yeah. Well, you know, I brought up my kids in the 70s, which was a golden age.
Sure.
But there are two movies that I showed them that I think, for some reason, maybe two of the best movies I've ever shown them. The first one is Star Wars,
Mm-hmm.
and the second one is Rocky.
Yeah, there's obviously terrific movies.
I mean, yeah, for kids
Now,
of any age.
let me ask you, you tell me, what benefit is there in showing a kid Rocky, which is one of my favorite movies?
Sure. I think the real benefit there is to show the nitty-gritty life of people who want to make it, people who want another chance
Mhm.
to become something. In the sense, I'm sounding like Brando on the waterfront, but Rocky is trying to become something, and so there's been a theme in some of the ones that we've talked about here already, of striving, of working
Yeah.
to get to be something, and then it's in the excitement of the boxing ring,
Right.
of the incremental increase in tension about our hero.
Mm-hmm. I think also there are great lessons about humility and dignity in that movie.
Good.
Rocky is probably one of the most humble on-screen characters I think I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Also, you know, there's another great scene where he picks up a girl. There's a young girl who's kind of hanging around the street with a bunch of hoods, and she's young, and Rocky says, "Hey Marie, come over here," and he takes her, he pulls her away, and he starts talking to her, and he walks her home, and he's telling her, "Hey, you shouldn't hang out with a bunch of guys like that. You know, those guys are lowlifes, and if you hang out with those kind of people, that's what's going to happen to you." And he goes on, and she's listening and listening and listening to him. He finally gets her to her door, and she goes in, and she goes, "Hey, Rocky," and he goes, "Yeah." She goes, "Screw you." And there's this moment where it's kind of really hurtful in that moment, because he's just really given a lot of himself to kind of give her this life lesson here, and she throws it back in his face. But the way he doesn't get mad, he kind of just swallows his pride, and it's a terrific moment, a moment that almost didn't make it into the movie. They were going to cut that out.
Oh.
But to me, there is a great life lesson there. Sometimes you will spill your guts. Sometimes you will open your heart to people, and they won't accept it. And there's a right way to handle that and a wrong way, and Rocky's way is the right way.
And in a more glamorous way, Star Wars does that same thing for me. The struggle, family unity, dealing with one's father, the excitement of the space age, but more than that, the excitement of life itself. These are all good things in Star Wars. Plus, it shows what movies can do visually. And that, I think, is a very important part. Kids can love it, like the way we said for Fantastic Mr. Fox. Every frame of that thing is a beautiful little painting.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a visual medium that too tells them. So I'm happy. I think we have a good list here.
Yeah, well, you got a list here. What else?
I know. We got too
What
many.
is on here?
You know what I'm thinking?
What?
In the current times, we've talked a lot about older films. Current times, I'm kind of liking the advancement that those kids' films have taken to something like Despicable Me.
Yeah. Well, you're right. I mean, a lot of these movies, the best ones, are movies that can be enjoyed by adults, too.
Yeah. And have a touch of irony, you know, kind of postmodern.
I guess you know what a great movie I think would be to show a kid is like a 12-year-old is Tootsie.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the
Great
gender
one.
relationship,
The
especially a young boy who, you know, their ideas of women are being formed, and it's just a great way to sort of turn that lens around a little bit.
A companion film.
Yeah.
We could have a festival. Some Like It Hot.
Something like that, yeah. And then leading to the crying game.